listening to Boxing Vibes TV News with JD, the only place for the latest and greatest news in the sport of boxing.
What's up, fight fans? This is JD of BVTV News, and I'm back to give y'all the latest and greatest news in the sport of boxing. With that being said, hit that subscribe button and that notification bell, and let's quickly jump into the news of the day. Now, as expected, Ryan Garcia has popped positive for that B sample that the whole boxing world has been waiting on since yesterday. Now, we all knew that there was a high probability that he was going to test positive for this B sample because the B sample was coming from the exact same urine sample that they did for the A sample. So there's no surprise at all that Ryan Garcia has tested positive. Now, the interesting element in all this that has suddenly been thrown out there by Ryan Garcia and his team, and, he's almost dropping this, right in lockstep with the announcement that the B sample was positive, is that Ryan Garcia and his team are trying to say that he went and got his hair follicles tested and sent to an independent toxicologist, and that it ended up coming back negative for Ostarine. Now, the question is, should this hair follicle report coming on the heels of the B sample announcement, it's almost like Ryan Garcia and his team was sitting back like Kendrick Lamar did with Drake, where they were almost waiting for the moment that it dropped that the B was positive, boom, we're going to come out and say that a hair follicle was negative. But should that really matter to you all? And I'll say this. Absolutely not. At the end of the day, Ryan Garcia cheated. And here's why the hair follicle element doesn't mean anything. And this is just damage control by Ryan Garcia and his team to go ahead and build in the excuse that it possibly was unintentional. Because the argument for the hair follicle is that the hair follicle is supposed to say how long somebody may have been taking a particular drug. That's the argument that Ryan Garcia and his team are going to say. They're going to say that, okay, we popped positive in our urine sample, so we can't refute that we were positive for Ostarine around the fight, maybe the week before and shortly after. We were positive, but if you look at our hair sample, we were negative, right? But here's the issue with all that, and here is why you see VADA and other bodies not worry about a hair follicle. Is because for different people, it can vary as to how long it could take for particular drugs to be able to be tested and be in your hair. So with that being said, let me break that down. VADA uses the urine sample because that can immediately and undeniably say whether you were positive for a drug or not. VADA and WADA, they are not interested in trying to figure out how long, how short you may have been taking a drug. If you pop positive around at any moment, you are popping positive. They're not interested in trying to look at hair follicles and see how long it may take for a drug to come up positive in a hair follicle. If I take drugs, it could potentially be 3 months before my hair follicle may pop positive for said steroid. The next person around the block, they could potentially take something, maybe about a month, and it pop positive in their hair follicle. It becomes very, very sketchy from person to person as to how long you have to ingest something before it's going to pop positive in your hair follicle. So that is why this whole hair follicle report by Ryan Garcia is really a much to do about nothing. The reality is, around the bout of April 20th, he was positive for Ostarine. We know that he purposely came into the fight overweight. We know that he had steroids in his system. And if we get into the element of the tainted supplements, and I'll say this again and I'll repeat this yet again. The tainted supplements excuse is even worse than the Canelo Alvarez excuse of eating tainted beef through some tacos in Mexico. I mean, tainted supplements, there's no excuse. And the reason why there's no excuse, I'll repeat yet again, is that A, not only are you responsible for anything that you ingest in your body as a fighter, but somebody who has the level of resources of a Ryan Garcia, there are too many avenues, too many tests, too many compounding pharmacies where he can go get supplements specifically tested and made for him to be walking around popping random supplements. It just doesn't add up for somebody like Ryan Garcia with the money and the resources that he has to be walking around and popping any old supplements. This is not something that we just see fight to fight to fight to fight popping up everywhere all across the sport of boxing. And that's because every fighter knows that you are responsible for what you ingest. So there is no excuse. I feel like the whole take the supplements excuse is absolutely a cover-up. It doesn't make sense. People are not walking around and popping positive and blaming it on supplements. That's why you got Canelo Alvarez saying it was beef. That's why you have Tyson Fury back in the day saying it was wild boar meat. And the list goes on. You're not walking around taking random supplements and then being able to blame it on that. It doesn't make sense. So when it's all said and done, I do believe that Ryan Garcia is going to get suspended. Now, the reason why he's throwing out the hair follicle element is because he's going to try to prove that potentially he wasn't taking it for a long time and that it was unintentional. And so if he can prove those things, it could be possible that it may be a very short suspension of a couple of months, maybe 3 months, 4 months, 5 months. All depends on the New York State Athletic Commission and how they see this whole thing, and if they truly believe that Ryan Garcia accidentally may have ingested Ostarine through tainted supplements. But at the end of the day, man, I feel like Ryan Garcia absolutely cheated. He definitely will be labeled as a drug cheat going forward in his career. Now, will this really end his career anyway, or will it stop him from making money? Heck no. Ryan Garcia is too entertaining. He's too much of a troll. He's too much of a figure in the sport right now that this one popping positive of Ostarine will stop him. Now, what it does do is it puts a lot of pressure on Ryan Garcia in his next bout or two, because everybody is going to immediately, mark my words, jump down on Ryan Garcia if suddenly in his next fight or two, he looks very lackluster or even gets beat. So he's going to have to be real strategic in these next couple of bouts, especially if him and Devin Haney don't end up doing a rematch, because everybody's going to point to this fight where he purposely knew all along that he wasn't going to make 140. And then on top of knowing that it was really going to be a catchweight fight, but he didn't tell Devin Haney, he also popped positive for steroids. So that's almost like a double whammy that's going to have a lot of people looking at Ryan Garcia going forward in his career. Now, he can move past it if he, from here on out, is always negative, doesn't pop positive again, and goes on to show that he still is a legit fighter in the ring and that he can still hold his own. So if all that comes to fruition, people will forget about this, but it'll just be a little asterisk on this Haney versus Garcia bout. But again, when it comes to the hair follicle reports, I'm sorry, man. It's much to do about nothing. This is just Ryan Garcia trying to set in motion the whole idea that he couldn't have been taking the drugs too long and that it didn't have any bearing on the fight and that it was accidental due to taking tainted supplements, which he hopes the New York State Athletic Commission would then be very lenient in their suspension of him and potentially maybe not even overturn the victory that he had. That becomes the biggest point of contention, because you can almost guarantee that Devin Haney and his legal team are going to push for the overturning of the bout, while Ryan Garcia is going to try to beg and plead that, hey, it couldn't have had this much of an impact, and I didn't really take it, it was accidental, all that to try to make sure that the victory still stands. But when it's all said and done, we'll see what happens going forward from here. I know for sure we're going to get a resolution on this coming in the next coming months when Ryan Garcia goes in front of the New York State Athletic Commission and pleads his case. Now that we officially have the B sample, we're going to see where this all goes from here and how lengthy of a suspension will New York give him. But y'all let me know in the comments section, what do y'all think about the Ryan Garcia B sample? Do you give any credence to this independent hair follicle situation that he's trying to bring up on the heels of the B sample? And I'm gonna add this too, this last little point. When we talk about the independent hair follicle sample that Ryan Garcia sent out, and I'm gonna keep it real with y'all. We live in a world where money talks and a lot of people can be bought off. And the issue I have is, again, if you really wanted to have this on the up and up, then this would be something that VADA would do. VADA would also test a hair follicle sample. They would break down the science. They'd be fair and unbiased because so many fighters go through the VADA protocol. But for you to prick some hair out of your head and go send it to an independent person, pretty much to try to kind of help you do damage control, I'm not going to lie. Not saying that, it's not real, but I think with how corrupt we know boxing is, many people don't trust independent tests that occur overall with some doctor or somebody that you and your team selected. Like some person that you selected that I'm gonna pop some hair out of my head and go give it directly to that doctor, and that doctor's gonna come back and give me that negative test. So even that part of it, in my opinion, is very skeptical, because if it truly was on the up and up, this would be something that you would send to a neutral party and not send it to somebody of your team's choosing. But y'all let me know what y'all think in the comment section, man. This is JD at BVTV News. We're going to keep giving y'all the latest and greatest news in the sport of boxing. Till next time,